I share my God Queens and Kings Ashibana Baramasedi. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another video. It's your girl Coco Pia and I'm back with another one. If you are new to my channel, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, move the video around so that it reaches people that need assistance with their spiritual journey. As you can see by the title, the difference between a spiritual awakening and a spiritual calling. Okay, so now a spiritual awakening and a spiritual calling, it's two different things. Remember, we are all spiritual beings experiencing being human. We are spirit before we are humans. You understand? We come from other realms before we were into this realm. You understand? So now let's dive deep into the spiritual awakening. When a person is going through a spiritual awakening, it's more of them realizing certain things about themselves and about the world around them, and then changing everything to what fits them and makes them feel whole and feels good. You understand? When you go through a spiritual awakening, you become aware, you become awake, and see things for what they are and do things for yourself. You no longer become selfless, you become selfish. And then you only become selfless to those that deserve your selflessness, if I'm making sense, if that's even a word. You understand? So when you're going through a spiritual awakening, you're going to experience a lot of things. You're going to feel like a certain death. You're going to feel a loss of self, because that loss of self was never you. It was something or a certain part of yourself that was programmed and built and conditioned to be a certain way, which the reason why you are disconnecting from it is because it never made sense to you. That's why you are separating from it, because it never made sense to you. It was never you. You understand? And then when we tap into a spiritual calling, let's tap into a spiritual calling is when you are being called to do something. We can be called to do a lot of things. You don't necessarily have to be called to be a healer, a herbalist, a bone reader, a prophetic person, have psychic abilities. You are called for different things. You can be called to be creative, to be a businessman, to be a businesswoman, to have this, to do that, to lead, to want to become this, to become that. You understand? So now I'm going to touch the spiritual calling on the prophetic gift and the creativeness of becoming a leader, an impact in society or a community. A spiritual calling is when you're being called. You can either be called to become a healer because you come from a background of healers, or you can be called to become a leader in a certain community because you come from a background of people who used to lead certain communities due to the things they had. You understand? Or the mentality they had, the logic they had, and how they could use certain things to bring forth and assist people in their communities. So when you are being called, there will be information that is given to you to guide you and lead you into that direction that you're supposed to go into. Someone that goes through a spiritual awakening, someone that goes through a spiritual awakening can also go through a spiritual calling, because remember, when you go through a spiritual awakening, it can also assist you to find ways to align with what you have been called here on earth to do. It can be a lot of things, you understand? So it's impossible for someone that has a spiritual calling to not go through a spiritual awakening. And there are people that can go through a spiritual awakening and then not even have a spiritual calling. But I don't think there is someone that has goes through a spiritual awakening and then not find their spiritual calling. You understand? Yes, you can find a spiritual calling into society where you are a teacher and then you are led to being in that surrounding to protect children that are spiritual beings, and they're gonna go through spiritual awakenings, and then your presence there keeps them rooted. You understand? It's different things for different people. But what I'm saying is that the difference between a spiritual awakening and a spiritual calling is that when you go through a spiritual calling, it's more of you awakening to your true self. And then when you go through a spiritual calling, when you go through a spiritual awakening, it's more you awakening to your true self. When you go through a spiritual calling, it's more of you following the calling that you have been called to do in this physical realm. You understand? So when you awaken, you're going to go through a spiritual calling, which you have been called to do. But other than that, that's what I wanted to share with you. I share my God, Queens and Kings.